All right, so welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're exploring the idea of noble character. Specifically, we're going to look at it through uh, the lens of Islam.
Okay.
We'll be using Habib Umar bin Hafiz's book as our guide, The Clarification of Noble Character.
Yeah, it's a fascinating book. It's structured kind of like 30 individual lessons. It's almost like a self-improvement guide, but of course rooted in Islamic teachings.
And our goal today is to give everyone listening a taste of that.
Hmm.
So, some examples, some insights that even if you're not familiar with Islam specifically, you can still get something out of it.
Right.
Because ultimately, I mean, who doesn't want to be a better person?
Exactly, exactly. And Habib Umar really stresses that noble character, it's not just about being a good person, it's tied directly to success. And not just success in this life, but, the afterlife as well. In fact, there's this quote early on in the book. He says, "He who purifies the soul succeeds, and he who corrupts it fails."
Yeah, that's a powerful one because it really makes you think about it as an active process, right?
Absolutely.
You're not just born with good character or bad character. It's something you got to work towards. And that leads us to the first big trait that he really dives into, which is patience.
Okay.
But it's not just, grit your teeth and bear it kind of patience that we often think of. He actually breaks it down into three distinct types.
Yes, he does.
So tell me, what are those three types of patience?
Well, the first type is patience in acts of obedience. Think of it like, sticking with your commitments even when it's tough. Like consistently praying even when you're exhausted. Things like that.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the
Yeah.
second type?
So the second type of patience is patience in resisting things you shouldn't do. This is all about battling temptation,
Right.
whether it's big or small. Like, choosing the salad when what you really want is a burger.
Oh, we all have those inner struggles,
You
right?
too.
And it reminds me of that story that Habib Umar shares about the angel Jibril, uh, where God sends him to view paradise and hell.
Right,
And you would think, naturally, paradise would be surrounded by all these wonderful, beautiful things.
right.
And
Well,
hell would be surrounded by awful, terrible things.
yeah, that's what you would think.
But he flips the script.
He does.
Paradise is actually surrounded by hardships,
Right.
and hell is surrounded by worldly pleasures.
Exactly. And what's fascinating about that is it suggests that those really pleasurable, tempting things
Yeah.
can actually lead us astray. It takes real patience, that second type of patience, to resist those and choose the path that leads to something better, the path that leads to growth and fulfillment.
That's such a powerful image, right?
It is.
It's like we always say the easiest choice isn't always the best choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that story really drives home the point that sometimes to build noble character, you actually got to embrace the harder path.
Exactly. Now, moving on, Habib Umar delves into two more traits that are kind of collected: forbearance and magnanimity.
Those are some big words.
They are.
Can you refresh my memory? What do those mean exactly?
Of course. So, forbearance is about self-control, but specifically when you've been wronged. So it's not just enduring hardship generally, it's rising above that urge to retaliate when somebody's done you wrong.
So it's not just letting it go, it's actively choosing not to react negatively.
Exactly. And then magnanimity kind of goes along with that. It's about being big-hearted,
Yeah.
Not sweating the small stuff, trusting that things will work out even when things seem unfair. It's like this inner strength.
And I love how he describes forbearance. He says, the one who is forbearing is almost a prophet. So he's really putting it on a pedestal.
Yeah, he is. He's saying it's a rare trait, incredibly valuable to cultivate.
Okay, so then there's truthfulness. Now that seems pretty straightforward on the surface, right?
Right.
But he takes it deeper, as he often does.
Yeah.
He breaks truthfulness down into three levels.
Yes, he does.
So what are those three levels?
So it starts at the most basic one, which is truthfulness in speech.
Okay, just not lying.
Right, avoiding lies. But then he goes deeper than that.
Okay, so what are the other two?
So truthfulness of action is about doing things with excellence, with complete sincerity, not just going through the motions, but really putting your best foot forward.
So it's about the effort, the intention behind the actions, not just checking things off a list.
Exactly. And then finally, we have truthfulness of intention.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really challenging, because this requires a lot of self-reflection.
So how do you define that?
It's about making sure that your motives are pure, that you're not doing things for selfish reasons or to, impress other people.
That is a high bar. It makes me think about how much emphasis he puts on intention. throughout this whole book.
Yeah.
Whether it's truthfulness or kindness or honoring your parents, everything seems to come back to intention.
You're right. He places a lot of emphasis on it. And I think what's key here is that the outward actions only matter if they're driven by a sincere, pure inner state. It's not enough to just do the right things. You have to want to do them for the right reasons.
Yeah, and that's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, how do you know if your intentions are truly pure? It feels like, there's always a bit of ego mixed in there. A little bit of self-interest, maybe.
It's true. But, he doesn't present it as something you just achieve overnight.
Right.
He talks about it as a constant process, a constant effort to purify your heart from things like arrogance or the desire to show off.
So it's like a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And that makes me think about, people listening to this. It might feel overwhelming, like, how can I ever achieve that? But maybe that's not the point.
Right. The point is to strive.
Yeah.
It's about constantly checking those intentions, making sure that you're acting from a place of genuine goodness, not just trying to look good.
It's like that saying, fake it till you make it, but for your soul.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Like maybe if you just keep trying to align your actions with pure intention, eventually it starts to change you from the inside out.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads into what Habib Umar emphasizes next, which is kindness and bringing joy to others. These are woven throughout several of his lessons, so he highlights them a lot.
And I love how he focuses on the small things.
Yeah.
The everyday acts of consideration. Like he tells this sweet little story about the prophet just taking the time to put some water near a thirsty cat.
Right.
It's a beautiful picture of compassion, even for such a small creature.
Exactly. And that's connected to how he emphasizes good treatment of your neighbors, making people happy, showing mercy. These are all part of cultivating that noble character.
And it's not just stories. He also, backs it up with teachings from the Quran, from the Hadith.
Mm-hmm.
And he even quotes a Hadith that says, every time you make a believer happy, an angel is created that worships God.
Oh, wow.
So even if you're not religious, that imagery is so powerful. It really highlights that ripple effect of kindness.
Absolutely. Now, kind of switching gears a bit, Habib Umar also talks about something that can be, pretty challenging, especially these days, and that's honoring your parents. And he's honest about the fact that this is a real struggle for a lot of people, especially with all the complicated family dynamics we have in the modern world. But he reminds us how important this duty is, especially as our parents get older and might need more care and support.
Yeah, and he shares a verse from the Quran that's so beautiful. It says, and we have enjoined upon man care for his parents. His mother carried him, increasing her in weakness upon weakness, and his weaning is in 2 years. Be grateful to me and to your parents. To me is the final destination.
Wow.
It reminds you of everything they've done for us, right?
It does.
All the sacrifices they've made and the debt we owe them, which, speaking of debt, he tells this incredibly humbling story.
You mean the one about the man who carries his mother on pilgrimage?
Yeah. So this man, he thinks this amazing act of devotion is going to, repay his mother for everything she did for him, especially giving birth to him.
Right.
But then another scholar tells him, nope, not even close.
Wow.
It really puts things in perspective, It makes you realize just how much gratitude and respect we should have for our parents.
It does. It's a humbling reminder to always treat them with kindness.
Now, before we move on, I want to touch on a couple of other things that just really stood out to me from the book.
Okay.
First, there's this belief that a believer's wife will actually be their wife in paradise.
Oh, wow.
And she'll be even more beautiful than the celestial maidens. It's such a beautiful concept, right?
It is.
It really emphasizes the enduring bond of marriage and how important it is to cultivate these loving, respectful relationships in this life.
That really challenges the common perception of paradise.
Yeah, totally. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is this thing called the Hadith of Love.
Oh, yeah.
Which is this beautiful prayer that the prophet taught to his beloved companion.
The one that focuses on remembering God and expressing gratitude.
Yes. And seeking to perfect your worship.
It is so powerful.
It's such a beautiful reminder that even as we're striving to build this noble character, we should always be seeking guidance from something higher than ourselves.
It really brings together the core principles, of what it means to have noble character.
It does. And, as we go deeper into Habib Umar's teachings, I think you'll see that these themes of intention, gratitude, striving for perfection, they just keep coming up over and over again.
And on that note, I think it's time to take a deeper dive into those themes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's continue our exploration.
That sounds good. So, we were talking about intention and that idea of like faking it till you make it, but for your soul.
Right.
And I was thinking about how hard that can be. Like, it's easy to focus on just doing the right things, but how do you actually cultivate that inner purity,
Yeah.
that genuine goodness?
Well, Habib Umar actually addresses that directly.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, there's a whole lesson on remembrance.
Okay.
He describes it as like the fastest way to purify the heart and to be forgiven.
Interesting. So he's not just talking about formal prayer, right?
Yeah.
Seems like it's something deeper than that.
Yeah, exactly. It's about being constantly aware of God throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And that can take a lot of different forms, like reciting the Quran or repeating certain supplications,
Okay.
even just remembering God in your heart as you're, going about your day.
He even mentioned some specific things to say, like when you're leaving the house or getting dressed.
He does, yeah.
It's like incorporating little reminders of the divine into everything you do.
Right, and those little reminders can have a huge impact. It's like a shield against temptation or a way to refocus when you get distracted. It's a constant reminder to, like, check your intentions.
Yeah, like having that internal compass always pointing you in the right direction.
Exactly. And this whole idea of remembrance is closely tied to another important trait, gratitude.
Okay.
But again, he goes a little deeper than just feeling thankful.
So what does he say about it?
For him, gratitude means actually applying the teachings of Islam to your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's about showing your thankfulness through your actions, your character, how you interact with everyone.
It reminds me of that story he tells about the Jewish merchant who was super lenient with people who owed him money, especially the ones who were struggling.
Oh, yeah, the one where when he dies, God asks him about it.
Yes. And the merchant's like, well, I was hoping maybe God would overlook my own shortcomings because I was so kind to others.
And God's response is so beautiful.
I know, God basically says, well, it's only right that we're more generous than you, so we've pardoned you.
It's amazing.
Divine reciprocity, right?
Yeah.
How you treat other people is ultimately how you're treating God.
Yeah.
It's a reminder to be compassionate and generous in all your interactions.
Absolutely. And speaking of treating people well, let's talk about what Habib Umar says about seeking perfection.
Okay.
Now, it's important to clarify here, he doesn't mean like being perfect.
Right.
Nobody can do that. It's more about striving to do everything with excellence, you know, as if you were doing it directly for God.
He has this one quote, it's so good. It says, perfection is to worship Allah as if you see him, and if you see him not, know that he sees you. It's like chills.
Yeah, it's powerful. It reminds you that God is always watching, and that should make you want to do your best in everything.
It makes me think of that story about the scholar who was praised for how he did his ablution.
Right, even just the simple act of washing before prayer.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we should strive for excellence in every aspect of our lives, even the little things.
Exactly. And he contrasts this with the people who rush through their prayers or do them just to be seen by others. He calls them out. He says true perfection has to come from a place of sincere devotion.
It's a good reminder for everyone, even if you're not religious, just to check your motivations. Are you doing things out of love and care or just to impress people?
Such a good point. And it brings us back to that theme of intention, which runs through this whole book. It's a call to examine yourself, to purify your intentions, and really try to embody a character that reflects the best of Islamic teachings.
And you know what? Even though this deep dive is specifically about Islamic noble character, I feel like a lot of these lessons just resonate on a human level,
It's totally.
These are universal values.
Mm-hmm. Patience, truthfulness, kindness, gratitude, humility. These are
Yeah.
things that speak to, like, the best of humanity.
It's like he's given us this roadmap, not just for being a better Muslim, but for being a better person, period.
Yeah.
And I think that's why his teachings are so powerful, so relatable. One thing that's really cool is how he doesn't just like list out all these traits separately.
Right.
He weaves them together. He shows how they're all connected.
He does, yeah.
They kind of build on each other.
Yeah.
It's like this whole tapestry of noble character.
He has a whole lesson called Embracing Noble Character, and he really emphasizes that point. Like, your actions, your words, your very presence should reflect these virtues. It's not enough to just know about them.
Yeah, it's about living it, embodying it.
Exactly.
And he uses this analogy of the Prophet Muhammad transforming his companions.
Right.
These were people who were used to conflict, aggression, and he guided them to become known for compassion and mercy.
It's incredible.
It shows you just how powerful it can be to really embrace these virtues, not just for yourself, but for the people around you.
Yeah, and on the flip side, he talks about what happens when you neglect that inner work.
What does he say?
He says that people who just focus on outward appearances, without actually cultivating that inner virtue, they're like a beautiful body with a corrupt heart.
Ooh, that's a strong image.
It is. But it really emphasizes the importance of aligning your inner self with your outer self.
Yeah, it makes you think about how much we judge people based on, like, first impressions.
Right.
Superficial stuff.
Totally.
But real character goes so much deeper than that.
And he tells some amazing stories to illustrate this. Do you remember the one about the man who falsely accuses a scholar of stealing?
Oh, yeah. And then later he finds out the truth about the scholar.
Exactly, and he begs for forgiveness.
And the scholar, instead of being like, I told you so, he forgives him. He even gives the guy money.
I know. It's such a beautiful example of how noble character actually plays out in the real world, turning potential conflict into compassion.
Totally. And there's that other one about the Jewish woman who gives her last piece of food to a beggar.
Right. And later, her child is in danger, and an angel saves him.
Because of her kindness.
Exactly. It shows you that our actions have consequences in this life and the next.
Those stories are so powerful, they really stick with you.
Yeah, they do.
And thinking about this deep dive as a whole, I think what really stands out to me is that this book isn't just some theoretical discussion, It's like a practical guide to living a life that benefits you and everyone around you.
It's a call to action, to take responsibility for your own character, to always strive for excellence.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this exploration of Islamic noble character, I want to turn to you, the listener. What resonated with you the most? Which of these traits really stood out?
Yeah, and what's one small step you can take, maybe even today, to start cultivating that trait in your own life? It doesn't have to be something huge. Even a small act of kindness, a moment of patience, a conscious effort to check your intentions. These all add up.
It's all about progress, not perfection. And this journey of character development, well, it's a lifelong thing. So take what you've learned today and let it inspire you to be the best version of yourself. And until next time, keep diving deep.